You're standing in the Palace of Versailles, 1805, and the ballroom smells wrong. Not like perfume or champagne, the way you'd expect. It smells like almonds, bitter almonds. And underneath that, something metallic, something that makes your throat tighten. The Empress Josephine is hosting another of her legendary soirees, and the room blazes with candlelight reflecting off the walls. Except the walls aren't gold tonight. They're green, emerald green. Scheele's green, they call it, the most fashionable color in all of Europe. Every surface drips with it. The wallpaper, the upholstery, the curtains that pool on marble floors like toxic waterfalls. The ladies wear it too, of course. Gowns that shimmer and catch the light, making them look like walking jewels. Lady Catherine de Montfort twirls past you in a dress so vibrant it seems to glow. 78 yards of fabric dyed in that perfect poisonous shade. She's laughing, flirting with a Swedish diplomat, her fan fluttering. She doesn't know she's wearing arsenic. None of them do. Or maybe they do, and they just don't care. Because fashion in the Napoleonic court isn't about survival, it's about dominance. The thing about Scheele's green is that it was everywhere. Invented in 1775 by Swedish chemist Carl Wilhelm Scheele, this copper arsenide compound created the most brilliant, stable green pigment the world had ever seen. Before Scheele, green dyes faded or looked muddy. But this was the green of new leaves, of precious stones, of envy itself. And it contained enough arsenic to kill you slowly while you danced. The manufacturers knew. Of course they knew. Factory workers producing Scheele's green died regularly. Their skin turned gray. Their hair fell out. They vomited blood and convulsed on the factory floors, while supervisors stepped over them to check the next batch. But profit doesn't care about dead workers, and neither did the aristocracy who bought their products. By 1810, Scheele's green and its slightly less lethal cousin Paris green decorated everything. Wallpaper, fabrics, artificial flowers, children's toys, cake decorations. Yes, you read that correctly. They put arsenic on cakes. Those delicate sugar flowers adorning your wedding cake? Poisonous. That lovely wreath of fake flowers in your daughter's hair? Slowly killing her. But the real horror show happened in the ballrooms and bedrooms of the wealthy. The Countess Marie-Anne de Beaufort threw a masquerade ball in 1808, wearing a gown that contemporary accounts describe as luminous as spring itself. The dress required 83 yards of silk gauze, all dyed in Scheele's green, layered so thickly it looked almost three-dimensional. She danced for 5 hours. By midnight, she complained of feeling faint. By dawn, she was vomiting uncontrollably. Her skin took on a grayish pallor, and her breath smelled like garlic and metal. The doctors called it nervous exhaustion. She died 3 days later, and her maid, who had helped her dress and undress for that ball, died 6 days after that. The dress itself was sold at auction. Another wealthy woman bought it, wore it twice, and died within the month. But here is where it gets truly grotesque. They didn't just absorb the poison through their skin. When women danced, the friction of movement caused the arsenic particles to become airborne. They were breathing it. Every twirl, every curtsy, every dramatic sweep of fabric released a small cloud of poison into the air. The more energetic the dancing, the more poison filled the room. And in those hot, crowded ballrooms, with poor ventilation and hundreds of bodies pressed together, everyone was inhaling death. Gentlemen who waltzed with these ladies developed mysterious rashes on their hands and faces. Musicians in the orchestra pit suffered headaches and nosebleeds that doctors couldn't explain. Servants who laundered the gowns developed open sores on their arms and hands. One particularly morbid account from a French physician describes examining the body of a young woman who died after attending a series of balls during carnival season. When they cut into her, her internal organs had a greenish tint. The arsenic had saturated her so completely that it had literally color from the inside. Her liver looked like jade, her kidneys like unripe fruit. But surely someone noticed? Surely someone connected the deaths to the dresses? They did. Medical journals published warnings as early as 1814. A British doctor named William Hines wrote an entire treatise on arsenic poisoning from green fabrics. He documented case after case. The dancer who died at age 19, the ballroom attendant who went blind, the seamstress whose hands became permanently paralyzed after constructing emerald evening gowns. And the response? The fashion magazines published articles reassuring readers that Scheele's green was perfectly safe and that the deaths were merely coincidental. The dye manufacturers threatened lawsuits against anyone who suggested their products were dangerous. The aristocracy kept buying, kept wearing, kept dying, because admitting the danger would mean admitting they'd been slowly poisoning themselves for decades out of vanity. Some historians estimate that tens of thousands died from arsenic exposure in fabrics and wallpapers during the Napoleonic era and the decades that followed. But we'll never know the true number because the deaths were attributed to everything else: consumption, nervous disorders, weak constitutions, the vapors, acts of God, anything but the truth, which was that the wealthy were literally wearing death and calling it fashion. Napoleon himself supposedly hated green. Some accounts suggest he banned it from his personal chambers after several of his staff members developed mysterious illnesses. But Josephine loved it. Her rooms at Malmaison were entirely decorated in Scheele's green wallpaper, imported from the finest manufacturers in Germany. She insisted on it despite Napoleon's objections. And here's the darkest twist. After their divorce, when Josephine moved permanently to Malmaison, her health began to deteriorate rapidly. She suffered from chronic respiratory problems, mysterious rashes, and what her doctors called nervous complaints. She died in 1814 at age 50, and while the official cause was pneumonia, some modern historians believe chronic arsenic exposure from her beloved green rooms contributed to her death. But let's talk about the children, because this is where the story becomes truly unforgivable. Nurseries were decorated in Scheele's green because it was considered calming and natural. Baby clothes, particularly christening gowns, were often trimmed with green fabric flowers. Toys were painted green. And children, with their smaller bodies and developing systems, were even more vulnerable to the poison. There are documented cases of infants dying in their cribs, surrounded by green wallpaper that released arsenic dust every time someone closed a door too hard or the wind blew through an open window. Their tiny lungs filled with poison while they slept. Parents mourned these crib deaths as acts of God, never knowing they decorated their children's rooms with murder. One particularly horrifying account from 1816 describes a wealthy merchant family in London who lost 3 children in succession, each dying before their second birthday. The family doctor finally insisted they strip the nursery wallpaper. Underneath, the plaster was stained green and smelled of almonds. The 4th child, moved to a different room, survived. The seamstresses who made these garments suffered worst of all. They spent hours handling the fabric, cutting it, sewing it, pressing it with hot irons that released arsenic fumes into their small, poorly ventilated workshops. Their fingertips turned black, their nails fell off. They developed a distinctive cough that other seamstresses called the green death rattle. Many went blind from the arsenic affecting their optic nerves. But they kept working because they had no choice, because feeding their families meant slowly poisoning themselves. And the truly sick part? The wealthy women who wore the finished gowns never thought about the seamstresses, never considered the cost. They complained if a stitch was crooked, if a hem was uneven, but they never wondered why their favorite dressmaker suddenly couldn't thread a needle anymore, why her hands shook, why she died at 35 looking 70. The fashion continued well into the 1860s, even after multiple public health campaigns and exposes in newspapers. Queen Victoria's coronation gown in 1838 featured green elements, though whether it was Scheele's green, specifically is debated. The pre-Raphaelite painters loved painting women in green gowns, and some art historians believe the models suffered health effects from wearing arsenic-laced costumes during long sitting sessions. It wasn't until the 1870s, when synthetic dyes became widely available and cheaper than arsenic-based pigments, that Scheele's green finally fell out of fashion. Not because people suddenly cared about dyeing, because there was a better, cheaper alternative. The market decided, not morality. Even then, arsenic-laden items remained in circulation for decades. That Victorian-era wallpaper in your grandmother's house? There's a non-zero chance it contains arsenic. Those antique fabric flowers in the museum? Probably poisonous. The legacy of Scheele's green lingers in attics and estate sales and antique shops. Still dangerous, still capable of releasing arsenic dust if disturbed. So the next time you see a portrait from the Napoleonic era, all those elegant ladies in their empire waist gowns, notice the green ones. Notice how the fabric seems to glow with an unnatural luminescence. And remember that beauty had a price, and that price was paid in convulsions and vomit, and slow, agonizing death. They knew, the manufacturers knew, the doctors knew, and after a while, even the fashionable ladies themselves must have known, or at least suspected. But they wore the green anyway, because what's a little poison compared to being the most beautiful woman in the room? What's death compared to being unforgettable?